this lawyer from San Francisco calls me one day and says he represents the man who was Deep Throat. And which, for the young people, that was the mysterious source of Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein when they were reporting their Watergate stories for the Washington Post. So I talked to him for a while, and I said, let me have somebody get back to you. So I had signed an editor at the magazine, David Frand, and he wasn't doing anything at the time. So I said, why don't you follow up with him and let's see where this goes. So he goes back and forth with him for over 6 months, and finally he comes into my office. He said, okay, we've got a name. And I said, what is it? He said, Mark Felt. And I said, this is before the internet where you could just like Google him immediately. I had no idea who he was, and nor did David, but there were problems with the story. First of all, that Mark Felt was in his 90s. He had had a stroke and he was suffering from dementia. And he'd only told a couple of family members that he in fact was Deep Throat. He was the number 2 at the FBI. And so this went on for about a year and a half, and then finally we had the story, and I wanted to keep it off the Condé Nast servers, which served other magazines like Vogue and GQ and the New Yorker. I wanted this to be kept completely secret because I knew this was a big story. So we created an office within an office with craft paper on the windows, and we kept it off the server. And this took another half year to bring to fruition. We had a photograph. And so then I get married, and my wife and I we get married in Connecticut. We go on our honeymoon, and we're coming back from the Bahamas. And I didn't have a cell phone in those days. This is 2005, but Anna did. And so she gets a ring on her phone. We're in the airport lounge, and she clicks it open. She goes, hello, and she goes, it's David Friend. I went, oh, fuck. So I said, can you say it on PBS? Probably not. And I said, hey, David. And he said, I just want to remind you that we released the Deep Throat story this morning. I said, oh, my God, I completely forgotten about it in all the hubbub of getting married and going on a honeymoon. And I said, if Woodward and Bernstein said anything? He said, no. Now, when we were closing this, we were only 95% sure Mark Felt was, in fact, Deep Throat. The only way to prove it would be to call Carl, who was on our masthead, but then he would have called Bob, and Bob would have gotten the Washington Post the next day. And if I called Bob, you'd have the same result. So we had to go to press and release the story without knowing that Bob and Carl had signed off on this. So they said they were going to make an announcement shortly. And what had happened was Ben Bradley had come into the office, called Bob and Carl into the office, and Len Downey, who was then the managing editor of the Post. And he said, look, they got you. You're going to have to go with it. So they made, as we were getting closer and closer to the gate, we kept moving to the back of the line, and his phone's going dead. Finally, just as we were just about to go through the ticket agent, Anna gets a call, and I pick up the phone, and I said, David, please, I hope you have some good news for me. And he said they just confirmed that it was that Mark Felt was Deep Throat. And I thought, oh my God, this is one of the happiest days on many reasons in my entire life. It was a really nice trip back to New York too.